Welcome to Conspiracist. Today, we are diving into a really complex hypothesis. The idea that governments have actively, intentionally concealed evidence of secret societies operating in politics.
It's a persistent idea, definitely. And we've got quite a range of material to look at today.
Yeah, everything from, historical accounts of actual secret societies through to analyses of how conspiracy theories themselves work and why they spread.
And our goal here, I think, is to be really objective.
Exactly. To evaluate the evidence, the reasoning behind these claims of government concealment related to secret societies and their political influence. Not to prove or disprove, necessarily, but to understand the arguments.
So maybe the best place to start is just defining what we mean by a secret society.
Good idea. What does constitute one, based on our sources?
Fundamentally, a secret society is defined by concealment.
Oh.
Deliberate concealment of its rituals, its beliefs, and sometimes its actual goals or purpose.
Okay.
And another key aspect is selective membership. It's not open just anybody. Entry is restricted.
That exclusivity seems important.
It really is. It helps build internal cohesion, maybe a sense of importance within the group. But this obscurity, this secrecy, it makes external scrutiny incredibly difficult.
Which is where the potential political angle comes in, right? If they have political aims.
Precisely. Accountability becomes a real issue.
Our sources list quite a few examples historically. We've got the Freemasons, the Illuminatis, the Knights Templar.
Those are sort of the classic ones, aren't they?
Yeah. And then more modern or varied examples like the Thule Society in Germany, the P2 Lodge in Italy, which we should definitely discuss.
Oh, absolutely.
Also, groups like the Ku Klux Klan, Aryan Brotherhood, various Irish secret societies mention Ribbon Men, Hibernians, IRB.
The Chinese Triads, the Japanese Genosha or Dark Ocean Group. It's a very broad category.
It really is. And it seems crucial to make a distinction between different types of these societies.
Yes, that's a key point. There's a difference between, say, historical or fraternal organizations.
Yeah.
Maybe their rituals are secret, but their overall aims might be social, charitable, not necessarily political.
Like the Freemasons often claim today.
Right. Versus those groups that have, or are alleged to have, clear political agendas. For them, secrecy isn't just about ritual. It's a tool to advance specific objectives.
And those objectives could potentially be subversive or even violent.
That's the concern, yes.
Okay, so let's look at some historical examples where these societies did get tangled up in politics. One early one in the U.S. was the Anti-Masonic Party, formed around 1828. What was driving that?
Well, it seems to have stemmed from a real fear. A fear that the Freemasons were becoming too secretive, too influential, too powerful within the political system.
So, hidden influence.
Exactly. And there were conspiracy theories circulating back then, too, even claims that Masons had committed murder to protect their secrets. It was potent enough to fuel the first major third party in U.S. politics.
And then, even earlier, late 1790s, there was the Illuminati scare in the U.S.
Right, tied into anxieties about the French Revolution and foreign interference.
How so?
Well, you had prominent Federalists, people like Timothy Dwight at Yale, who were deeply suspicious of Thomas Jefferson and his allies.
Because of their political views.
Partly, yes. Their more deist religious beliefs, their positive view of revolutionary France. Dwight and others suspected this was evidence of subversive Illuminati influence imported from Europe.
It's fascinating how these fears of hidden, foreign-inspired plots kind of echo through history.
It really is. The underlying anxiety seems quite persistent.
There are also claims about Freemasons being involved in actual revolutions, like the American Revolution, even the Russian one.
That connection is often made. It's true that many figures in the American Revolution and in movements against colonial empires elsewhere in the Americas were Masons.
So does that mean the Masons orchestrated these revolutions?
Not necessarily. It's more likely, perhaps, that Masonic lodges provided existing networks, places where people with shared Enlightenment ideals could connect, could organize. But saying the revolutions were centrally planned Masonic plots? Well, the evidence for that specific claim is usually considered weak. Shared membership doesn't automatically equal conspiracy.
Okay, that's an important distinction. Let's shift to a case that seems much more overtly political and, frankly, criminal. The P2 Lodge in Italy.
Ah, yes. Propaganda do.
Yeah.
That's a really significant and, frankly, quite disturbing example, led by Licio Gelli.
What was P2 involved in? The list seems expensive.
It really is. Sources link P2 to, well, just about everything illicit. Ties to Freemasonry, but also to neo-fascism, secret paramilitary groups, assassinations, major terrorist bombings like the Bologna Station bombing,
Wow.
an attempted coup, the Gulpi Borghese, even alleged ties to black magic, massive money laundering schemes involving figures like Roberto Calvi and Mikel Sindona, drug trafficking, the mafia.
Intelligence agencies?
Alleged links to the CIA, yes. And even, quite sensationally, speculation about involvement in the death of Pope John Paul I. It's an extraordinary web of alleged connections.
This case seems to directly hit our theme, a secret society deeply embedded in the state.
Absolutely. Because the membership wasn't just fringe figures. It included very high-ranking people in the Italian military, the intelligence services, politicians, industrialists, journalists.
So the potential for internal cover-up, for governmental concealment, seems inherent in that situation.
Exactly. If heads of your security services are in the secret society, how do you investigate it? And there were even claims by those involved in the Gulpi Borghese coup attempt that they had tacit support from the U.S., from NATO, specifically mentioning the CIA station chief in Rome.
Which raises serious questions about potential governmental awareness or even complicity at some level, doesn't it?
It certainly does. P2 really blurs the lines between a secret society and elements within the government itself.
Okay, let's touch on a few other examples mentioned. The Bolsheviks in Russia. How do they fit?
Well, while primarily a political party, their structure and methods had characteristics of a secret society.
Such as?
Selective recruitment, a kind of special knowledge or status conferred on members, demanding absolute loyalty, operating often in secrecy.
With the goal of overthrowing the existing order.
Precisely. A total transformation, a new world order in their view. And interestingly, sources confirm they received significant funding from Germany during World War I, which again points to that potential for covert external influence.
You also have the Thule Society in Germany.
Yes, known for its association with early Nazi figures. It was an occultist, Völkisch group, but it provided an early meeting ground and ideological influence for people who later became prominent in the Nazi Party.
And Cecil Rhodes. He apparently founded a secret society, too.
Yes, aimed at expanding the British Empire.
Yeah.
Recruited influential figures in politics, finance, education, trying to create a sort of hidden network to guide imperial policy.
And Aleph Ghani's Masonic Lodge in Constantinople.
That's cited as an example of a lodge becoming a center for revolutionary activity specifically for the Young Turks, who eventually overthrew the Ottoman Sultan.
So across different times, different places, we see these groups interacting with and sometimes directly trying to influence or overthrow political systems.
That historical context is crucial when we consider the core question: governmental concealment.
Right, because the very nature of these groups, their secrecy could make governments nervous, couldn't it?
Absolutely. Secrecy can easily be perceived as a threat. So it's plausible governments would monitor these groups, maybe even try to suppress information about their activities.
And if these societies were involved in major political events, coups, assassinations, like potentially with P2, governments might have strong motives to hide those links.
Definitely. Several reasons. Maintaining public order and stability is a big one. Admitting a secret society influenced a major event could seriously undermine trust in the government's control.
Or competence.
Or competence, exactly. Then there's the foreign influence angle. If a secret society involved was backed by another country, revealing that could cause huge diplomatic problems or make the nation look weak.
And as we saw with P2, if powerful people within the government are members,
then self-preservation becomes a very powerful motive for internal concealment, covering tracks to protect themselves and their allies.
Is there historical precedent for governments cracking down on secret societies they perceived as threats?
Oh, yes. The classic example is King Philip IV of France going after the Knights Templar in the early 14th century.
What happened there?
Arrests on a massive scale, confiscation of their enormous wealth, trials based on forced confessions often obtained through torture, accusing them of heresy, blasphemy, all sorts of things.
So a clear case of state power being used against a powerful secret order?
Absolutely. While the order might have survived in other forms elsewhere, in France, it was ruthlessly suppressed. It shows governments have acted decisively when they felt threatened by such groups.
Okay, this naturally leads us into the whole phenomenon of conspiracy theories themselves. Because claims about secret societies and government cover-ups are often central to them.
Yes, understanding conspiracy theories is vital here. What is a conspiracy theory, fundamentally?
Well, the sources define it as an explanation for events that attributes them to secret plots. Plots by powerful, usually seen as malevolent groups, often with political motives.
Right. It often involves rejecting the official or most obvious explanation in favor of a hidden secret one.
And interestingly, there's even a theory about the term conspiracy theory itself.
You mean the idea that the CIA popularized it?
Yeah, that theory suggests it was pushed to discredit critics, particularly those questioning the Warren Commission's findings on the JFK assassination.
Whether that specific origin story is true or not, the term can certainly be used dismissively. But the core idea in most conspiracy theories is this hidden, malevolent force at work.
Often portrayed as a kind of good versus evil struggle with the public as victims.
Exactly. The alleged conspirators are rarely seen as just acting out of ordinary self-interest. There's often an assumption of deep-seated malice.
Something else the sources mention is that belief in one conspiracy theory often correlates with belief in others, even contradictory ones.
That's a fascinating finding, isn't it? It suggests that for some people, the idea of a cover-up, the general suspicion of authority, might be more important than the specific details of any single theory.
Like a general worldview.
Perhaps. A deep distrust of established institutions, maybe a predisposition to see hidden manipulation everywhere. Could also relate to our brains trying to find patterns, even in randomness.
Hyperactive agency detection, seeing intention where there might be none.
Exactly. Our brains are wired to look for agents, for causes. Sometimes that system might go into overdrive when faced with complex or frightening events, leading us to assume a deliberate conspiracy when the reality might be more chaotic or mundane.
What about psychological factors linked to believing in these theories?
Research points to a few correlates. Things like a generally untrusting nature, holding ideological views outside the mainstream, higher levels of anxiety or concern for personal safety, a tendency to receive agency or meaning in random events, what researchers term bullshit receptivity, basically, being less discerning about questionable claims and certain personality traits related to schizotypy, although that doesn't mean clinical illness, just traits like unusual perceptual experiences or odd beliefs. Also, holding dangerous world beliefs.
And social media, does that play a big role?
It seems to. Studies suggest people who use social media more tend, on average, to hold more conspiracy beliefs. But it's not necessarily that social media creates the belief.
More like it amplifies it.
Right. It seems you often need a pre-existing mindset, one that's already receptive to conspiratorial ideas. Then social media can act as an echo chamber, reinforcing those beliefs, providing validation, and exposing people to even more related content.
Okay, so we have historical examples where secret societies were involved in politics, sometimes quite significantly, like P2, and we have this whole phenomenon of conspiracy theories, sometimes latching on to these groups. How do we draw the line? How do we distinguish genuine conspiratorial politics from, well, unfounded theories about government concealment?
That is the absolute crux of the issue, isn't it? It's vital to acknowledge that real conspiracies do happen. History is full of them. Watergate, Iran-Contra, the P2 Lodge itself involved actual conspiracy.
But we can't just dismiss all claims out of hand.
No, definitely not. But claims of widespread, systematic governmental concealment of secret society influence, especially on a grand global scale, require extraordinary evidence. And that evidence needs rigorous, objective evaluation.
Not just emotional conviction or, connecting dots without solid proof.
Exactly. The historical cases show secret societies have been players in political events. That's documented. But the specific question we're looking at, the extent of intentional, large-scale concealment by governments, that's where the evidence often becomes much thinner, more speculative.
So wrapping up this deep dive then, looking at the hypothesis of governmental concealment of secret societies in politics. It seems incredibly complex.
It really is. You've got documented historical actions by actual secret groups, some quite impactful. You've got governmental responses, sometimes overt suppression like the Templars, sometimes potentially more covert or ambiguous actions, or even alleged complicity, as hinted at with P2.
And layered over all of that is the whole world of conspiracy theories, driven by psychology, social factors, distrust.
And while history gives us these examples, P2, the Bolsheviks, maybe even the anti-Masonic, fears the idea of a systematic, ongoing, intentional concealment effort by governments on a grand scale. Well, the sources we looked at don't seem to provide definitive smoking gun proof for that broader claim. It remains largely in the realm of speculation and debate.
The prevalence of conspiracy theories certainly complicates any objective assessment, too. It's easy for documented facts to get mixed up with unfounded speculation.
Absolutely. Which leads to, I think, an important question for our listeners to consider.
What's that?
How can we, as individuals, critically evaluate these kinds of claims? Claims about hidden political influence, secret plots, government cover-ups. How do we differentiate between documented history involving secretive groups and theories of deliberate, large-scale concealment that might lack solid evidence? What's our responsibility in trying to tell the difference?
That's a crucial question indeed, something to definitely reflect on. Thanks for listening to Conspiracist.